basic introduction of who we are, what we're doing, and so on. So, hi, hello, how are you, everybody? Thank you so much for joining our channel, our show. I am Ananya, but I have the real Parak insider with me, who is Niharika Gorpade. And wherever you're listening from, whether you've come in from Niharika's channel or the Hairpin Co. or mine, you are all welcome. And we are looking forward to chatting with you, looking forward to your comments below. Even if you want to interact with us on social media, we'll list down our socials right after this video ends. But we're looking forward to basically unpacking everything that's happening on track and off track in Formula One and contextualizing these things so that you are able to paint a better picture of what's going on. So, without further ado, Niharika, first of all, thank you so much for joining. Um,
Hi.
this is going to be a fun one because so much has happened over the last 2 days, but we have to touch upon whatever has happened, 5 weekends, 6 weekends already. So I want to throw it back to you.
Yeah.
What do you think about the season so far? Is there somebody that has impressed you? Is there somebody that has kind of disappointed you?
I think impressing wise, maybe, see, this week, I mean, since the time I touched down from China to now, there's so much that has happened off track. And this season is going to be a lot about the driver market, about all the off track headlines. You have so many drivers out of contract by the end of the year. So, yes, there's going to be a lot of shuffling around. And I think it's too early to judge any driver as such, because when it comes to teams and cars, these cars do take, these are difficult cars to drive, the modern F1 cars, and given the ground effect technology in place, there is somewhere a bit of a uh, I'd say a gestation period till a driver gets it set up right. With the cars, some are able to get it on right away and some are not. And I think the one driver that's impressed me this year, I think, would be Lando in the rain in the sprint in China. That lap was unbelievable. Yeah, so Lando Norris
Very,
is for me.
very cool lap.
Yeah,
Honestly,
from
that
the
came
current
from
weekend.
nowhere.
Yeah,
But is there
and
anybody throughout? Now we're a couple of races already into the season, 20% ish into the season. So has somebody been completely, baffling to you? Their performance, the car performance.
I guess yes. Quite a few actually. The one team that has really baffled me is Mercedes. They just don't seem to have it right. And then there's obviously Lewis has had a few P7s and P9s. I think that is
Yes.
completely unexpected. Then yeah, he's been saying we're toying around with the setup and things like that. George says he's very comfortable, but even he hasn't been able to push it further than a P5 or P4. I think not even further than a P5 if I'm not wrong. I think
Okay.
Bahrain was about a P4-ish. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, with George, I guess that's one team that I'm really surprised with, that they weren't able to turn around the performance. And the other one that has superbly surprised me is probably Alpine. I am really surprised with Alpine,
So I know
that
that.
they are the new back markers on the grid. And in China, they brought in an update, which was on Esteban's car, where the chassis, obviously, they came in with a very heavy car. So that made their performance very difficult. Then Esteban's car has been given the upgrades and the chassis. And that was the difference between him and Pierre. But I think even Pierre Gasly, I'm literally surprised at his performance, because last year he had Esteban in control and he outperformed Esteban. But this year he is 5-0. He hasn't been able to beat his teammates since Bahrain.
So it's interesting that you drop these two names because these
Yeah,
are works teams, right? And you expect them
yeah.
to be somewhere fighting for the P2s, P3s, P4s, regardless of how how much you've actually invested into the team. So what do you think? We know that Mercedes have been out there complaining about their car, their setup, and so on. And at times, you like you mentioned, George was there somewhere in the front of the pack. But with Alpine, they are consistently dead last, or they have poor qualifying performances. They're just completely out of place almost every race so far. So, is
Yeah.
there something that you can pinpoint with respect to what is happening within Alpine for them to lose so much of performance, apart from the
I
car?
mean, on one hand, if you look at them, they came back as manufacturers, as a manufacturing outfit. You had Julian Palmer, you had Hulkenberg who went there, and Abitable led it. At that point, it seemed like they were on an upward trajectory and they were the fourth best team. last with Daniel Ricciardo and Hülkenberg driving for them.
Yeah.
After that, they have been able to do that. When Abiteboul left, Otmar came in. And they did have Fernando and Ocon, and they were performing decently well last year. And in 2021 when Fernando was on podium, uh, but then again they seem like the kind of politics that have unfolded in their team. They fired up their personnel. I think all they have competitive enough is probably an Esteban, Pierre, and a Doohan. And from what I hear about Alpine, one of the Alpine drivers will go, and Jack Doohan's looking for a drive for 2025, and I do see him replacing one of them. But whether even that's a good option for him remains to be a question mark, because I don't know how Alpine are going to turn around their performance. Honestly, even as the engine maker, the engines have been okayish. They also have reliability issues now and then when their chassis is okay. And that remains a concern as to last year they were very ambitious. I remember Pierre saying, "Oh, we want to be best of the rest," but that didn't look quite it. He got a podium with AlphaTauri and even won a race there, but in Alpine he's not been able to do much. That's the surprising part.
Very true. And we have been following the things that are happening from the management front from the outside,
Yeah,
right? With all the personnel changes, and now that Laurent Rossi has also been ousted from the team, it's kind of hanging in thin air, the team as of
yeah,
now, if you just put it into context of 2024. But now that
yeah.
they've brought in a bit of extra capital with a lot of celebrity investors actually putting money,
Yes, American investments that came in there. But
right?
that's the thing again, you're getting the investments, but you don't have the right pool of people. People like Alan Permain have left and gone to an RB. You have the best of talent going, even Otmar Zafna. Otmar, I think, wasn't given enough of time to turn that team around, honestly. Yes, he got that Piastri Alonso bit wrong, but I think he would have still been the better person to be that team principal than anyone else. You don't have those many people who are good enough to do that job. And yeah, I guess he might just be back with another team. He can't say much right now, but I think July onwards, we're told in the second half of the season, we'll get to know where Otmar goes and what team he'll be with. So they've lost good people. It's not just a small number of people they've lost. They've lost technical personnel, just everybody, and that's sad to see them because there is obviously. I mean, look at them when they were Renault with Fernando. They had two titles, and even as an engine manufacturer they dominated the 2010, 11, 12. It just went, it's all gone wrong for them, I think 22 onwards, or 2023 onwards rather, and that's sad to see. And after as far as you go to Mercedes, I don't understand them again.
I do think that Mercedes have a good chance, just that they're
Hmm.
not able to put the pieces together when it actually matters the most. They've got a car working for one driver, clearly,
Yes.
right? And that one driver is able to put string a couple of performances together. Admittedly, it's not that consistent. But do you think that they have potential to improve from here on?
See, here's the thing. uh Once say it's something like rain coming in, you saw Lewis immediately stole the show. So it's not like Hamilton is washed. When it comes to Mercedes, it's just a difficult car. They've just not been able to crack this ground effect technology and the cars that incorporate them. They've not been able to come up with a car that is good enough. And the customer teams, McLaren is better than them. Mercedes is better than them. Right now, they rank number 3
Yeah.
in the Mercedes powered cars. So that is the sad bit. And when it comes to, I mean, they got Allison back and things like that, but I guess they're not just able to get it to fix it together. And I won't be surprised if they turn it around at some point, but I think it will be later in the season. Maybe we can't expect wonders out of them at the moment. They have a lot of issues, but at the same time, you have teams like McLaren who turned it around last year midway through the season, and this year they've started on better footing and they are just going to improve. So I will expect Mercedes to be, I guess, fighting its own customers.
Speaking of wonders of the season, I think it would be incomplete to have this conversation without at least dropping Max Verstappen and Red Bull's name once, right? So far, it's been a pitch perfect season for them.
Yeah, for
Only
now.
one for now. For now, the only sort of black spot in their entire record is that one DNF in Australia, and apart from that,
Yes.
they've been on the gas. The entire team, not just the drivers, sub 2 second pit stops back to back, double stacking sub 2 seconds. That's insane.
Yeah.
So what do you make of Red Bull? Is this streak going to continue? Although, from my perspective, I don't see how this is going to end. But having talked to you before, I know that you come with a slightly more refined opinion on this.
See, we don't know. By the end of the day, this is, everybody is affected a bit by the cost cap.
Mm.
And Ferrari will have their massive upgrade, I think, coming into Imola, if I'm not wrong. Miami and Imola. I think they were trying to push for one in Japan, and that did not happen. China, they didn't bring much. But I do expect their cars to be better in Imola. And I think Red Bull's also bringing their last upgrade, I believe, by Imola, their last pick or something like that. They won't have more updates after that. But they did update their car. The RB20 was updated in Japan, so yes, they had an edge over their customer teams. And this is going to be a bit of a developmental race. We still haven't seen McLaren get its full upgrades and perform to its best, but Andrea Stella and Lando Norris have come out with a very ambitious statement that they can beat the Red Bull. And we're forgetting we still have 19 races to go. And 19 races is almost a whole championship from the bygone era. The 19 races is a lot of races for things to go up and down. So I don't want to jump to that conclusion that Red Bull will keep on having 1-2s and that they'll keep winning. No, I don't think so. Every track is different, and we have way too many of them. And don't forget the fatigue that comes into it at some point. Maybe Max is relentless, but I can't say the same about Checo. Maybe he's there right now, but we've often seen Checo Perez, when it comes to his performance, he tends to trail off a bit in the second half. So I don't know how long he's going to be able to keep up that momentum of being right behind Max. So yeah, let's see. I expect the Ferraris to pick up their game sooner or later. I expect McLaren to maybe upgrade their car. That's one team I'd watch out for this year. And as far as Aston Martin goes, I'm not really sure about their upgrades or things like that. Because honestly, in that team, I use only one car as a reference point, which is Fernando's. Lance's performances are just in bits and bursts, I guess. So
Very
that's
true.
really not a reference point for me as to where they stand in the pecking order.
But you have been there on the ground and you've had a chat with Christian Horner, you've had a chat with the Red Bull team.
Hmm.
It's been a bit of a tough start to the season for them with all the things that have gone on outside the team, the race team itself.
Hmm.
What is the environment like within? Are they looking positive? Are they looking cohesive as a team?
See, here's the thing. Red Bull is a well-oiled machine when it comes to its aerodynamics department, the factory, Milton Keynes. It runs the way it runs. And the way the trackside team runs is precision perfect. Even when Horner's personal matter was at its full steam, we didn't see that team deflect, and that didn't reflect in their performances. But here's the thing: at that point, Max Verstappen had made it very clear. Whenever we said, "Will you continue and see through your contract?" He made it. He used to give very ambiguous statements, saying that yes, I'm going to remain with Red Bull. I want a peaceful environment to work in, and yes, he also had the Marco caveat in that if helmet goes, I go. But he was very clear he'll continue there if they have a quicker car, a winning car. So he's been playing his cards very close to his chest, if we look at it in the media domain. And yeah, I mean, with Max, he's never really come out saying, I'm 100% going to be at Red Bull till 2028. So when we had a chat with Christian Horner that day, actually the incident so happened that we had a Toto Wolff session before Horner. So we were at Mercedes, and Toto let it out that Max, the whole driver market hinges on the decision Max Verstappen takes. That was Toto's revelation. Then a few journalists, including the Dutch journalist, probed Toto, saying, "Are you sure? You still think Max can move to Mercedes?" So he's like, "Yes, Max is an open agent for 2025," and a lot of people asked him that. And then my question to Toto was, so how are you so sure, and what can you market to a Max Verstappen or a Carlos Sainz? Are you so positive about your 2026 engine? So his words to us were like, oh, between Raymond, Max, and Joss, they have a good understanding of motorsport. And then he said a line where we are confident in our powertrains program, and we've done it before. We'll do it again with the engine regs. But Max, when it comes to 2025 and beyond, drivers are going to think more than the current dominance. And Max does think beyond winning. That was his line, that Max thinks beyond winning. So when we walked out from there and went to, say, Christian, I was the one who led that question, saying, Christian, we just walked out from here and you're talking about Max's flawless performance today. So on that topic, how about Max staying here? Because Toto still thinks he can market Max to Mercedes. And are you confident about your 2026 engine? So that was my question to Horner. And then it took a lot of prim and probing to actually get a proper answer out of him. And then Horner obviously trolled Toto in his own way. And that banter between those two, they're never going to agree on something, to be honest. They haven't in the past, they're never going to do that in the future. And that banter between those two, whether it's in the media domain or whether it's on Netflix or whatever, it's probably the entertainment of Formula One, even though both enjoy winding each other up. So yeah, and at that point, Christian was very hale and hearty. I asked him about Max's ambiguous statements. He was like, no, there's no ambiguity. And yeah, then the last thing we'd asked him, does Max have that peaceful environment he wants? Because those Red Bull internal struggle, the rumors and speculation about that, it led to quite a bit where Max said that I want a peaceful environment to race in. And that's all I want. And Christian was like, yes, he does have that peaceful environment. If I were Max, why would he leave a winning team? And even Toto said that if I were Max, I'd stick with Red Bull. But you never say never in Formula One. And when it came to Horner, Horner denied it completely, saying almost to the level of saying that this is nonsense. But yeah, then you have this Adrian news.
This is amazing, because one thing that was a good question that you put to Toto, which was the how are you going to market Mercedes as a potential move to Max Verstappen when he's achieved
Yes.
so much. And just today we got a basic rumor out there that said that Mercedes is going to offer Max Verstappen the brand ambassadorship role for Mercedes, essentially 150 million plus all the perks that probably what Lewis Hamilton had within Mercedes
Yes.
directly transfer to Max Verstappen. Do you think that would be an enticing deal for somebody like Max, who is so persistent on winning?
I don't know. At this point, I don't even know whether Adrian's really leaving Red Bull and moving to another team. Because if you look at it, that whole story and how Adrian's story is played out, that's the only part that convinces us that fine, if Adrian leaves, then Max could leave, and then so could Helmut with Max, because wherever Max wants Helmut with him, because Helmut's played such a big role in his career. So Max is clear about that. Now the part with Helmut and Max leaving Red Bull for Mercedes, this is a story we'll only know after Miami, because I mean some of the German publications, one of them has said that there'd be a meeting post Miami, but the amount that's offered, I don't think Max really does this for the money. But there comes a point when even say Lewis or Max, they just start commanding their salaries. That's almost like negotiating a worth, that my worth is that. Even if you might not be lusting for that amount, and that not might be the primary goal. For someone like Max Verstappen, I think it'll be more whether that 2026 engine is going to be worth it. And as long as we asked, I mean, if you go by Christian, what I asked him, I said, do you have confidence in your 2026 Red Bull Powertrains program? Is that good enough for you to get drivers in? Or even hire Sainz or say others? Is that good enough? So he's like, yeah. He was like, yes, we are positive it's going to work for us. Because I mean, Red Bull went that route in 2021 or 2022 when they hired a lot of Honda personnel from Honda Racing UK. At that point, they were Honda powered, and so they are now too. But they hired a lot of personnel from there into RBPG. Then they've got Ford to collaborate for, I think that's going to be the battery supplier. But then the rest of the unit is going to be made in Red Bull powertrains, from where I understand it. But, like Carla said the other day on Thursday to us, that, I was asking him, should you be with the manufacturer? when it came to Carlos Sainz. Would a manufacturer make the better choice for you, like Audi or Mercedes? And I asked him how viable that option is. But he said, let's see the 2026 regs. And one of the things I pointed out was that the 2026 regs make more sense if a driver will always think of his future looking at whether the team's a manufacturer or not. But then Carlos was like, the 2026 regs are a coin toss. Nobody knows where they are. And that's the same thing that Christian said. That's the same thing that Wolf said. Like, we don't know what the other ones are doing. At this stage, we can't predict. But then we have our respective ambitious projects. And that's the basis, on the basis of that, we're marketing that. And that's how we are luring drivers. And I think the part that has convinced Max Verstappen is probably the fact that when it comes to the engine, it'll be Mercedes. But then the part that Christian Horner gave me was like, the chassis rules aren't out, and when it comes to chassis, I trust my team blindly, that kind of a thing. So that's the catch.
It's very interesting, and I think he is right about the fact that the entire driver market sort of hinges right now on Max Verstappen's
Yeah.
decision. But we also have to kind of track it back a little bit, because that's talk and news of 2026. But in 2025, we've got almost 12 drivers right now out of contract by the end of the season, and things are really heating up, because just in the last 2 days, we've got the Nui news, or
Yes.
not news, I'll call it a rumor for now, because it's been denied by Red Bull as well.
Yeah.
And then you've got a confirmed move by Hulkenberg to
Hmm.
Sauber Audi. So
Yeah.
where do you think the driver market's sort of heading towards? What is in store for, let's say, slightly less in the news, but still under the radar of everybody? People like Zhou, people like Ricardo and Sonoda, who are right now in the heat of it.
Yeah. So when you look at it, see this driver market, there are a lot of drivers. So I'll come to Joe, Ricardo, and Sunoda later. But when you talk of the front itself, if Max Verstappen moves to Mercedes, just a hypothetical, he's actually paving a way for Ricardo. Because they have 2 seats empty in the top team and Liam and Yuki in the junior team. Red Bull problem solved. I think that's what it'll come to if that happens. There's a big if. If I still feel Red Bull's the more attractive option for Max, and it's still all speculative. A lot of the stories from the German media and things like that are very speculative. We do not know whether Adrian Newey is actually going to move from Red Bull to another team or just take retirement, because from where we understand it, he's looking for an early release according to those rumors. And Red Bull were very quick to tell me that it's highly unlikely we have him under contract at least until the end of 2025. So now we don't know if he really plans to retire or do other things or move to a rival team. That is really not clear. Obviously, Newey has always had a wish to either work with Fernando or Lewis. So Aston Martin and Ferrari tend to be two teams that he's being linked to, but then he won't be able to work for them until 2027. And that's almost the end of Lewis or Fernando's contract. Yeah. So that's a little weird. And then when it comes to your driver market, now this all really, if the Newey move is really true, then the whole driver market moves accordingly.
So would you say that the driver market sort of revolves around one engineer rather than Max Verstappen?
I don't think it revolves around one engineer as such. But if Newey does leave, I do see the likes of Max thinking of something else, thinking of a better challenge. I do see Max talking to Mercedes. But whether that Mercedes deal would come through is a big question mark. Then you have a driver like Carlos. Now, the Hulkenberg news, we all knew that Hulk and Carlos were the primary options for Audi. Seidel being there. The last time Seidel worked with Hulk was when he became LMP1. I mean, he won the 24 Hours of Le Mans.
Yeah.
And Seidel wanted Nico. And then you have Carlos. Carlos and Nico have last been paired in Renault together, the team we spoke of earlier. And at that point, Hulk beat Carlos. So so that's a very strange statistics up there. And yeah, Carlos now, I think Audi and Mercedes seem the likely options, because Red Bull's not going to take that call soon. They have way too much on their plate at the moment. If you look at it, there was whole Newey thing, then a lead driver like Max also thinking of leaving the team. So I think when Toto said that, he was saying uh, with 4 or 5 journalists probing him, "Are you serious? You still think you can get Max?" And he was so confident saying that. Then at that point, there must have been something backing that up, or there must have been something to back that up. Maybe that's where I kind of doubt this, that there might be talks. Maybe Max is looking at options. So yeah, the driver market is a bit hinged on Max, but I think dominoes will quickly start to fall. When it comes to Joe, it's just sad. When we went to the Chinese Grand Prix, the grandstands sold out like in 5 minutes and 10 minutes. And whenever the crowd would roar, we would know either it's Hamilton or we'd know it's Joe, because the maximum number of fans were Joe's fans, or they were Lewis Hamilton fans, because he's been very popular in China.
He is. He is.
And we'd see those cars roar through the pit straight, and we were in one of those Lenovo. The media center was in one of those Lenovo capsules that you see across the track.
Yes.
So we could see when signs crashed. We could see when anybody's crashing near the pit straight. We could see that start. But whenever we knew the crowds are roaring, we knew Joe's passing. So that's how it was. Or whenever he'd get out of the pit lane or things like that. So, I mean, he seems to be the sensation in China, but sadly, I think that is not going to be enough to get him a drive next year. And then there's also the question of Valtteri. Valtteri or Joe not being talked about at all.
Enough, at least.
Yeah.
But I just want to, stay on this point of Zhou's whole showcase in China, right? We've come back to China after a couple of years, post COVID, for the first time, and he is also the first Chinese Grand Prix driver to race in China in Formula One. And it
Yep.
was quite nice as a viewer and as a Southeast Asian to actually look at the way that the Chinese Grand Prix organizers have sort of, even if it's a P14, it doesn't matter. Even if he had probably finished P20, they would have,
Yeah.
brought him onto the grid and done that sort of showcase. It was nice because you can finally see that, you can see how much hero building actually matters to a country and why we
Yes.
need to do it. We missed the opportunity to do something like this when Narayan Karthikeyan was on the grid, or when Karan Chandak was on the grid.
No, actually, Narain and Karan were on the grid when the Indian Grand Prix was there. Both of them were there. I
Exactly,
think.
but they didn't do the showcase
I
and
think
stuff, did they? They didn't.
they did. They did.
They
The
did.
one was with Caterham and the other was with HRT. I quite
HRT.
remember that. They were there. They did showcase a lot. There was Air Asia. Tony Fernandez owned that
Yes.
airlines, and that was on the Caterham. He also was owner or team principal of the
Tony
uh,
was a TP. Yeah.
DP or a TP of a team, and there was Monisha Kaltenborn. She got Amul
Yes.
on Sauber. There was a lot of India being showcased. We also had Force India, a full-fledged team with India on it back then when there was the Indian Grand Prix. So there was a lot of India in F1, and we've showcased quite a bit of it when we had the Indian Grand Prix. It was just sadly at that point, Formula One did not have its popularity with the youth. You didn't have so much of social media.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, do you
Yeah.
think that this was sort of amplified by the fact that so many people followed his journey to Formula One and
Yes.
supported him?
That too, and even the fact that there are a lot of people today. Formula One is just Netflix, just everything. Formula One is watched by more people and more younger people, and the word is out there. Formula One actually has earned that legitimacy with its growth and reach now. That anybody in the sport gets popular really easily, and they can make that impact the way Joe has made it. But sadly, it's not been enough to get him a drive next year. That's the sad part.
It is. It is. It truly is. I think personally, I have been following his performances through his F1 career, and they could have been better. With the kind of
Yeah.
prospect that he came into Formula One, having done so well in the
Yeah.
junior categories, you would expect him to sort of carry that momentum through Formula One, but it
Hmm.
just didn't work out for him.
Yeah, it hasn't worked out for him, sadly. And I wish we had more teams on the grid where you had a place for Joe. That's why this whole Andretti thing, when Andretti was not getting in, that's what made me feel bad. That at one point, the last time Formula One was in India, we had 12 teams on the grid and 24 drivers. You could have this kind of a showing. Now we have only 10 teams and 20 drivers. That makes it very limited slots for anybody to get to. And you can that also brings me to the part, or where we can segue into the fact that Formula One is still very British and European oriented. I mean, you can see that how many non-European and non-British non-British drivers do you have on the grid?
You can
Ricardo,
count them.
Perez, Sargent, Sonoda, Joe.
Five.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
And out of that, you can see how the news cycle works and how the lobbying works to and against them. For
So
example,
that's
Ollie, yeah, when you look at Ollie Behrman, he did a good job, but he also drove a Ferrari. He taken pole in F2 that day in Saudi Arabia. Then he sat in a Ferrari. But if he wasn't Brit, would he have been hyped up that much? Because I feel if he wasn't a British driver, the narrative that would have played out for him is wait and see what he does against Antonelli. Let's wait and watch how the F2 season pans out, and then he is good enough for the grid. And Ollie, I was impressed. He seemed to be a good driver. He was able to deliver when expected out of him. But I feel he has age in hand. He's got that, he's 18. He'll have his turn. But the real one I would really place there is Felipe Drogovic, who's Brazilian, again non-Brit and non-European, and not being spoken of at all.
so
He's the one you
you
put into the house.
absolutely, and I think you've brought in a
He's the
pretty
F2
good.
champion.
He is. He is. But do you feel this in the grid now that you've been here for 10 years and you've seen a buttload of drivers who've come in and gone out?
Yeah.
And you've seen a fair share of non Brit, non European drivers also make some seriously good performances and impact in Formula One, but haven't been given the chance to continue. Do you feel
Right.
that from a media perspective, also from just the way that Formula One is built, do we treat non European and non Brit drivers differently?
Yes, we do.
In what sense do we do treat them differently?
I don't because I'm non-Brit and non-European, and
Of
I'm
course, you and I
for
are the
me when
exception
I'm
here.
writing about drivers, all 20 matter. I
Very true.
do know for a fact that the press room is always been it. It has always been the most biased place. It's never been the most unbiased place. The French drivers have the French media for them. The Dutchies have the Dutch media for them. The Brits have the British media supporting them, and that media is there to criticize them and to back them up. It's like their own lobby. And so it is with the European media, which is there in its fuller presence. There's Japanese media, there's one Chinese journalist who I know, and a Chinese photographer, but I don't see much of a Chinese media there that writes. But when you do have a driver from a country, you need them to have that 2 or 3 journalists minimum to be there, to write about them, to write about their successes, whatever. And you don't see those many non-Europeans and non-Brits in F1. So yes, it's going to be biased. For instance, I've seen it. If you go and look at the case of Ricardo, it's unheard of to sit and judge a driver's performance in the second race of a season, particularly after Saudi Arabia. Eventually, he did show signs of turning it around in Japan. It's reflected in China. But look at the way he's got treated. It's
Yeah.
almost you've forgotten the fact that put him, Checo, and Sainz there. He's still the 8-time Grand Prix winner. He's still the one who knew the least about that AlphaTauri, and yet with an injured hand managed equaling Yuki. The score between those 6 races that he drove between Yuki and him is almost even Stevens. And that's just how it worked. But you see the narrative how it went out of hand, where you had by the 3rd race in the season after Friday, I started hearing that rumor about what do you say, the one where he was going to get an ultimatum, and that Red Bull were quick to quash it.
Yeah.
That again, I had put out a tweet for that. They said, in fact, there's no ultimatum. But I heard this on Friday after free practice 2, that is way before Ricardo's lap got deleted. And then when I really tried to dig into this bit, then we realized there was a bit of science lobby building in the press room. He's Euro. There were people pitching his drive. So how do you do it? Move a few contenders of his out of the way. And Ricardo's performances weren't making it very easy. And now that he has turned it around, there's obviously less. The lens have moved somewhere else at the moment. There's less focus on him because obviously China wasn't his fault. He had Yuki under control for majority of the weekend. But you look at how his narrative played out. That's one example. Is anybody talking of Jack Doohan? And in Lando and Piastri, Piastri is obviously not yet beaten Lando yet, or got the better of Lando this season. But this season is going to be very critical for Oscar to beat Lando.
Yes, that's true.
And at the moment, you just see Lando in the limelight. I haven't seen Piastri getting his due as such.
Absolutely. And I
Just
think
that makes a
even
huge
more,
difference.
it does. It does.
That
It
makes a
affects
huge difference. I
morale
mean, Carlos,
so much.
yes, he lost his drive. But then there was also Charles, who was not really performing against Carlos. He's still a 2-3 when it comes to how many weekends he has, or it's equal at the moment as to how many weekends he has outperformed his teammate. And then you have, say, a Perez or Ricardo or even a Yuki. If the roles were reversed and it was Yuki and De Vries in a reverse position, it would have been Yuki getting criticized horribly. Everybody acting like you need to appreciate Yuki Tsunoda now. I mean, why did it take you 3 seasons to appreciate him? He already put a De Vries in place. Let's start with that. De Vries had more than 10 or 11 seasons of single seaters under his belt. Yuki was only in his 4th season in single seaters.
Very true. And I think this is interesting because right now,
So,
if you see the kind of negative light that people have put Yuki Tsunoda in, and
hmm.
admittedly, a part of it is his own doing, right? The way he responds on the radio, but he's frequently come out and apologized for his behavior, saying that that's just my nature and I can't control it.
Yeah,
But
here's the thing. He's Asian. He's a different culture. He's not.
exactly.
He didn't know how to speak English. Yes, he swears a lot on the radio. Some enjoy it, some criticize it, and he is a bit hot-headed. But a lot of drivers have a hot-headed radio. Not all of it gets broadcasted. We get only 100% of the radio. We don't get 100% of the radio. We're getting only about a 50 to 60% of it that is broadcasted on the F1 app or TV is
Yeah.
hardly 10%. So I mean, I think that's being a bit too quick to judge. Have you heard Lance Stroll's radio? Yeah.
Yeah. True,
And
true.
I think Yuki has calmed down in that sense. And yes, he can have
Yes.
his moment. But Jehan Daruwala told me something really interesting. Daniel returned last year in Hungary. And Jehan and I had an interview with Jehan Daruwala. And Jehan's been Yuki Tsunoda's teammate.
Oh,
And
when?
Yuki beat him. Yeah.
When?
Yuki's first teammate in F2 and his only teammate in F2 is Jehan. And Jehan said one thing: Yuki is really, really good and is far underestimated in Formula One. He'd given me that on record. That Jehan, and he had told me that yes, Daniel will have the better of Yuki and he will eventually overcome Yuki because that's a seasoned Formula One driver. But he said Yuki won't make it easy for him. So this slump or this up and down, I did expect a bit of it.
But it's very interesting, right? When you talk about the press pen is not sorry, the media center, the press pen is not
Yeah.
exactly the most unbiased as it's supposed to be. It's journalistic integrity to be unbiased. What do you mean that there's rallying support for one driver versus another? Do you Is this
I
very
mean, even when the
obvious?
Christian story was doing the rounds, people were not bothered as to remaining a bit. You had the work brigade that was easy to jump onto, and say like justice for this and that. And then there was the other brigade which wanted to take advantage of the situation and try and pitch their drivers in. At that point, I think there was Fernando, Carlos, just so many of them contending for that one coveted Red Bull drive
Mm.
that there was just too much of it then. And then you have someone like, say, Checo who's sitting there. He's getting written off even if he's getting 1-2 or whatever, right behind Max or within a tenth of Max. And then you have Daniel, who's only in his second race. Now, from the first day in RB, they know that Yuki and Daniel have very different styles of driving. So I think when the setup somewhere starts favoring Yuki, Yuki starts looking good. And when it starts favoring Daniel, Daniel starts looking good. And I think somewhere in China, Japan and China, Japan it equalized. In China, it's shown its, what do you say, the full results. But at the end of the day, you can't have these lobbies. I mean, you can't have, just because it's European or Brit, you can't negate another driver. I mean, the same thing. Is anybody talking of Albon, who also is a contender for Red Bull?
Nobody is. I don't think
And
I've
is anybody
I've
talking
seen
of
him.
Logan Sargent, who's working hard? He's trying his best, but that pressure is more on him than anyone. And he's a sweet chap. He deserves to be there as much as anybody else does. But then he's also going to get that non-Euro and non-British driver treatment that most non-Euros and non-Brits get in the paddock. And that sometimes those biases sometimes tend to, you know, override people's merit. It's not fair. You end up overlooking a lot of good drivers. I mean, say De Vries wouldn't have been in that car last year if they wouldn't have thought of Tsunoda to be so bad, weak. Yes, he was up against a Gasly, but Gasly in the first two seasons, those were Yuki's second or third season in single seaters to start with. Yuki's first single seater season was, I think, in Japan. Second one was F2. Third and fourth was in F1 against Gasly. So you can't expect him to flourish.
Correct. Absolutely.
But then the way he was being criticized when it was against Gasly, then you put him against a De Vries and he starts to shine, and that's everybody's like, oh, that shouldn't have happened. But have you given him credit? He beat a De Vries who was much more experienced than him. That shouldn't have been the case. And with Daniel and him, it's going to go a little up and down though.
That's
But
the
there
whole
has
point
not
about.
been enough credit given to him, I feel.
I agree. This is the whole
Yeah.
point of contextualizing any performance, right? It's very easy
Yeah.
to just
And
look at the data, write it off. Look at the data,
yeah.
inferences, write it off. But are you really?
Yeah, and I mean, you can look at that. Like, I think in that perspective, when it comes to Dan and Checo, I think there are two things that even the age comes in with these two. But I mean, I'd be foolish to believe that tomorrow, when Yuki and Lawson are sitting in that seat and not performing, that they are going to get the same kind of support, because they're also non-Brit and non-European, and they'll get written off as ruthlessly, say, as a Daniel or Checo would. So that'll
Very true.
happen. That'll pan out exactly the same way.
I hope not, but
Yeah, I hope
think-
not.
but
Yeah.
I think history tends to repeat itself more often
Yeah.
than not, right? So
And that's
I
where I
don't
think
know.
a lot of people get offended too.
Mm. Right.
Like, I mean, you remember Alistair and Alistair's dad, Alex Young, was there at the Indian Racing League.
Yes.
And the way he described Formula One, he was like in front of 4 people, he had told us, oh, F1's the Euro Mafia, that's it. And he's a Malaysian F1 driver who's driven for one of the best teams there. So that was evidence of it.
I wasn't a part of this conversation, but
Yeah.
it's amazing that,
Yeah.
sadly amazing that
Yeah.
most non-European, non-Brit drivers have the same view of Formula One
Yeah.
and the way that they're being treated by pretty much all the stakeholders within it.
Basically, I mean, you're treated well. Like, look at Ricardo's case. He's very, very popular. And sometimes that popularity goes against him. But when it comes to the media domain, he has like, what, 1 or 2 journalists there who will even take his side.
Right.
And I mean, most of them were waiting to write him off since he returned since Hungary. And that you could see that kind of building there. Then he performed in Mexico, and then you see it go down. In Yuki's case, same story. They just refused to believe in a Tsunoda right from the beginning, which is sad. Even Joe, there are days when he's matched Valtteri. Valtteri has been a Mercedes driver. He shouldn't be matching Valtteri. I think they're not giving Joe enough of credit. I think that's where Valtteri is not done well enough, where he should have been far ahead of Joe, but that really doesn't seem to be the case.
I completely agree. But
yeah,
I know that we, like you mentioned earlier, we have an entire championship worth of a season to go. And we're just right around the corner from Miami, which is this weekend. Not this weekend, but the coming weekend. What are your thoughts going into Miami? What can we expect? And what are you looking forward to the most? I know there's a Mercedes Max Verstappen alleged meeting that's going to happen sometime this week. But apart from that, anything that...
Yeah, I'm very interested how Thursday in the press room pans out. Because you've had that Daniel Stroll incident. So there's going to be a lot of that in the press. I can like understand the Thursday headlines. The press conference on Thursday is going to be the whole Stroll Daniel bit where the shunt and things like that. Then there'll obviously be extra focus on the Red Bull and RB drive. Then you'll have Christian being asked about is Adrian really leaving by Friday, because Friday is team reps day. Or he'll be asked that on Thursday itself. Let's see how that goes. But yeah, that'll be that. And then you have like Andrea Stella and Lando have actually made a very bold statement in China, where they've said they'd be able to
Beat the Red
beat
Bulls.
Red Bull at some point this season. So that's going to be very fascinating to cross question if somebody in the press room really is able to do that, because I'm not going to be in Miami. My next race is in Imola. But I'm really interested in knowing how that pans out. And yeah, I mean, I really want to see what they have to say. And the one thing we haven't covered is basically the part where Mike Crack and Aston Martin have actually come outside in Stroll.
Come again? I think I lost you this.
We didn't. The part we didn't cover is the part where Mike Crack has
Ah,
actually come out siding Stroll for the whole
siding
creating the,
Stroll.
yeah, after the incident in the Chinese Grand Prix.
How strange. But then again, did he have any other position apart from siding Stroll as a
Well, that's
team
the whole
principal?
thing. That team is just so built around him. That's really interesting what's happening. And now we're hearing that there's another speculation that I read about today. It's being speculated that Lawrence Stroll might sell 25%.
Of
25% of Aston Martin's shares are up for sale. So I don't know if it's Aston Martin Lagonda, the
mm,
holding company, or whether it's the team.
the,
Because if it's the team, then one can see Honda buy into that. Given that the new engine regs are there and they're returning as a full-fledged manufacturer, if Honda were to, kind of buy that team, you would, I mean, we'd be seeing something really interesting. Then one wouldn't, that day wouldn't be far when, say, a Yuki's put there because he's a Honda driver.
or in Avasa makes way for new.
Yeah, I think with Iwasa, it's Red Bull who tends to take that call there. But with
Yeah.
Yuki, it's Honda. That's something I've been told. So
Oh,
let's see how that
so
pans
let's
out.
have a
But that'll
say
be
in
really
Avasa.
interesting. That's one team I've never understood whether Lance really wants to drive. Because on some days he looks like he loves the sport and he's enjoying doing what he's doing, and on some days he just looks like he is not into it. Like if you listen to the voice notes in the media pen that we have, uh, they don't go beyond a minute. This time I was we were the first group to get Lance in the print media pen, and his file somehow went to 1 minute 30. And every time we cross questioned him about it, all he kept saying is the Constina effect. It wasn't my fault.
I saw that.
That bit I felt was a bit far fetched.
But anyway, I think we're almost at time and we need to sort of wrap it up. But
Yeah.
thanks so much, Niharika, for joining me. And I think I'm looking forward to what we get to talk about next week, because it's going to be something different, something more spicier, I hope. Like
Yes,
it's
I
not
hope
been
it's more
spicy already.
spicy. Like, when you say going to Miami, I think Miami might give us a lot of headlines to look forward
Yeah.
to. There's going to be a lot of things that'll come out of Miami. I think this whole Hulk being hired by Audi at this stage is probably one of the reasons could be to pressure Sainz into taking a call.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. So I'll be
That would be
very
an interesting
interesting how
move.
that pans out. Yeah.
I would, to be very honest, like to see signs in Audi. I don't know why, and I know
In
you
Red
have
Bull,
quoted in at Audi.
Audi. Yeah.
Yes, it would be very interesting. Yeah, he's the perfect fit within Red Bull, but now that with he's there with Max and Max is in great form, I don't know to what extent he'll be able to really move things around.
I mean,
But with
everybody is
Audi,
assuming that, the thing about 2026 is everybody's assuming somebody like a Mercedes, or, there's going to be that one engine manufacturer that comes out with a bazooka engine and that's it. Why are we forgetting that Honda has also made a good engine that was almost 10 bhp of Mercedes by the end of 2021? Why are
yeah.
we also forgetting that maybe Audi can come up with an equally good engine? And for all you know, they're all equal. And just a bit here and there,
But I
and
think it's
that there isn't so
also
much of disparity in the engines, which means we might just be into a more equal season, and that means every player could come into play, because in Formula One you really never say never. We're just going by the rule that, or the understanding that, it'll be one team will dominate, and whoever does it will be a manufacturer. There are just too many assumptions and presumptions into play, but there could be a multitude of possibilities the way that could pan out. And then the 26
true.
chassis regs, which are not yet out.
True, but I think the reason why people are not probably talking about that, or they have the notion that only it's going to be a dominant thing again, is because of
Hmm.
historical precedent, right?
Yeah.
2014, the next big challenger that we had was with Ferrari in 2017, and after that, it's
Hmm.
just been Mercedes, Mercedes, Mercedes all the way. till Red Bull stopped that. And then after that, it's just been Red Bull, Red Bull, Red Bull all the way.
Yeah.
So I think it's
But I
it's
think
normal.
Ferrari will also be a player in the game, and I think we're discounting them too much even this season. I think it'll be a Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari. They'll come a bit close, and the midfield's already tightened up,
Very
like
true.
properly. It's really, really tight in the midfield.
Midfield, I think, is
Um,
nicer to watch, to be honest.
yeah, and yeah, the front of the field, I think it'll be a Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren. I'm still expecting that dominance to fade out a bit at some point this season. I don't think it'll be that straightforward. Initially, maybe it's looking like that. And yeah, Miami is a street circuit, different tarmac. Anything can happen.
I'm looking
So yeah.
forward to it. So, thank you so much for your time. And to everybody that's listening in, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope to bring you a kicker episode for the next post Miami episode. So, stay tuned in. And if you have any comments, if you have any questions for Niharika, please drop them in the comments or tag us wherever you're watching us from. And we'll catch you next week.